Welcome to the Saturday night of the weekend retreat. And this evening we have the delight of having a story from Maitrikaya, and then we'll have a short break, and then there'll be a puja to Amitabha. Just a few words about Maitrikaya. Maitrikaya has his feet firmly rooted in Irish soil, but his gaze is also turned upwards, looking at the stars, particularly the guiding stars of the Buddha, the Dhamma, and the Sangha. And Maitrikaya is an extremely passionate man. His name means body of love, but he pours that passion into his love of friendship and also his love of communicating the Dhamma, which has affected him deeply. And he shares that very generously. And I'm really looking forward to what he has to say about the Buddha of love, the Buddha of infinite light, which is very close to Maitrikaya's heart. So over to you, Maitrikaya.
Thank you, Pavra, for that again, excellent introduction. Embarrassing, actually. Just a little bit of an intro. So when Pavra asked me to tell this story about Amitabha on this retreat, I was really delighted because he said I have a long time connection with the Red Buddha of Love. And this goes back to long before I was ordained and got to practice. It goes back to a time when I first heard the mantra Amitabha Re. And sound, I think, is a really important vehicle. It is for me anyway, for our spiritual aspirations. So this story starts in relatively modern times, back in 1951. In fact, just 3 years before I was born. So we start when our teacher Sangharashada's journey in India was just beginning. While staying in an ashram, before he was even ordained a Buddhist monk, and living in a cave called Vipaksa Gihya on the south slope of a hill, he had a vision. Here he'd been devoting most of his time to meditation. He was meditating many hours of the day, and he developed a high temperature, but he didn't feel unwell. He describes feeling blissful and almost ecstatic, and the heat seemed to almost envelop his whole body with a feeling of infinite warmth, comfort and security. And he describes the vision he had, which I'm going to give you in his own words, rather than try and interpret it. So one night I found myself, as it were, out of my body, in the presence of Amitabha, Buddha of infinite light, who presides over the western quarter of the universe. The colour of the Buddha was a deep, rich, luminous red, like that of rubies, though at the same time soft and glowing, like the light of the setting sun. While his left hand rested in his lap, the fingers of his right hand held up by the stalk a single red lotus in full bloom. And he sat in the usual cross-legged posture on an enormous red lotus that floated on the surface of the sea. To the left, immediately beneath the raised right arm of the Buddha, was the red hemisphere of the setting sun, its reflection glittering golden across the waters. How long the experience lasted, I do not know, for I seemed to be out of time as well as out of body. But I saw the Buddha as clearly as I have ever seen anything under ordinary circumstances of my life. Indeed, far more clearly and vividly. The rich red colour of Amitabha himself, as well as the two lotuses and the setting sun, made a particularly deep impression on me. It was more wonderful, more appealing than any earthly red. It was like a red light, but soft, and at the same time so vivid as to be altogether without parallel. Nearly a quarter of a century later, the figure of the red Buddha is as clear to me in recollection as it was the next morning in the Viryapaksa Guhya. So who is this red Buddha Amitabha? Was he just as Bhante Sangharakshita saw him? So we need to go back. We need to go back beyond what Bhante saw. So let's go back further beyond Bhante's vision. Way back, even beyond the 2,500 years since the time of our historical Buddha, Shakyamuni, back into mythic time even, almost immeasurable time. So let us journey back now in our imagination to it said over 10 million years ago. Can we conceive of that? Back to the time of a Buddha called Lokeshvara Raja, whose name means sovereign king of the world. And we are told this Buddha lived immeasurable, countless, inconceivable eons ago. Again, can we even conceive of a time scale such as this? At the time of this Buddha, there lived a king who was so deeply moved by the suffering of beings that he gave up his throne and he became a monk called Dharmakara. And Dharmakara was so heavily influenced by Lokeshvara Vajra, who was said to have been the 81st Buddha. And he vowed to become a Buddha himself, with the aim of creating a Buddha land that would be free of all limitations. Dharmakara, who was supremely mindful, supremely knowledgeable, wise, and totally committed to the path. So he prostrated himself in front of the Buddha Lokeshvara Vajra and in verse praised him and finished with the Bodhisattva vow as follows. The King of Kings with all the powers of a Buddha, whose splendour is boundless, sheds his light in all directions. May I become a Buddha like him, a Lord of the Dharma, and bring emancipation from old age, death and birth. I now undertake this commitment. I will become a Buddha and protect all living beings. My radiance will shine throughout as many world systems as there are grains of sand in the river Ganges, and throughout the Buddha fields they contain. My Buddha field will be exalted, unsurpassed, supreme. In the perfectly formed world, everything will be superior. The happiness of the realm of nirvana is beyond compare. I will cleanse the Buddha field of impurity. Living beings will gather there from all the 10 directions of space. And when they come, they will achieve happiness. With the Buddha as witness to my practice, I will cultivate an aspiration that is filled with the power of truth and energy. So from the outset of his Bodhisattva career, Dharmakara dwelled in deep insight into ultimate reality and envisioned this transcendent realm of exquisite beauty and happiness, which could be shared even by ordinary beings of inferior spiritual capacities. In other words, he was not satisfied with his attainment of Bodhi alone, the highest wisdom of enlightenment. With irresistible compassion and loving kindness, he sought to embrace all beings in his compassionate light and bring them to attain freedom from the defilements of evil passions. So his grand scheme of becoming a Buddha of infinite light and life establishing a Buddha land of perfect bliss, and saving all beings through faith became a reality after he accumulated a vast mass of pure merit and virtue through the performance of the 6 paramitas of clarity, or charity, observing the precepts, patience, efforts, meditation, and wisdom. Again, it took Dharmakara innumerable kalpas to realize this, and some 10 kalpas ago, it said, he became a Buddha, this Buddha called Amitabha, the Buddha of infinite light, who now dwells in the Buddha land called Sukhavati, the land of perfect bliss, where people enjoy the highest spiritual bliss of nirvana and partake of the everlasting bodhisattva activity of saving other beings. He had meditated at length on other Buddha lands and set down what he learned in 48 vows. Eventually he had achieved enlightenment and became this Buddha Amitabha and established his Buddha land of Sukhavati. But the most important vow of the 48 was the 18th, which said, "If I were to become a Buddha and people hearing my name have faith and joy and recite it for even 10 times, but are not born into my pure land, may I not gain enlightenment." Since he did gain enlightenment, however, it follows that those who do have faith and do have joy in Amitabha and who recite his name will be born into this pure land, this land of bliss, Sukhavati. So the sutra goes on to explain that Amitabha, after accumulating all this great merit over countless lives, finally achieved Buddhahood and created this land of bliss, this Sukhavati, which is also called possessing happiness. And Sukhavati is situated in the outermost west, beyond the bounds of our world. And by the power of his vows, Amitabha made it possible for all those who call upon him to be reborn into this land and dare to undergo instruction by him in the Dharma and ultimately become bodhisattvas and Buddhas in their turn. And from there, these same bodhisattvas and Buddhas return to the world to help yet more people while they still reside in this land of Sukhavati. So it's a magical world. So what is this magical land of Sukhavati like? Well, the Buddha Shakyamuni spoke about it when he described to Shariputra in great detail what it's like as they sat in Shravati in Jeta's Grove. And the Buddha said that passing from here through hundreds of thousands of Buddha fields to the west, there was this world called ultimate bliss. And in this land lived the Buddha called Amitabha, who right now teaches the Dharma. This land of ultimate bliss, he said, has pools of 7 jewels filled with 8 waters of merit and virtue. And at the bottom of each pool is sand made of gold. On 4 sides are stairs made of gold, of silver, of lapis lazuli and crystal. And above are pavilions adorned with gold, with silver, with lapis lazuli, crystal, mother of pearl, red pearls and carnelian. So a very rare and beautiful landscape. And in these pools are lotuses as big as cartwheels, made of coloured lights of green, of yellow, red and white, wonderfully fragrant and pure. And there is always heavenly music, and the ground is yellow gold. During the day and night, a heavenly rain of mandava flowers falls. And throughout the clear morning, living beings of this land gather sackfuls of these flowers to offer to the hundreds of thousands of millions of Buddhas of all directions. Everywhere there are rare and wonderfully coloured birds, peacocks, white cranes, parrots and egrets, and even two-headed birds, all vari-coloured and beautiful to behold. And these flocks of birds sing of the Dharma night and day. And when living beings hear these sounds, they are mindful of the Buddha, they are mindful of the Dharma, and they are mindful of the Sangha. There are rows of jeweled trees whose fruit is made of rubies, of emeralds and other precious jewels, through which the soft wind blows and makes amazing musical sounds. And this also brings forth faith in the three jewels in anyone who hears it. Why though is this Buddha called Amitabha? The brilliance of this Buddha's light is measureless and illuminates the land in all directions. So for this reason he's called Amitabha, infinite light. Sometimes he's seated on a deep red lotus which floats on a calm ocean, his radiant form like the setting sun, casting a path of light across the waters. The glow of love and compassion radiating from Amitabha. He's totally approachable. And this sunset is a miracle. You can look directly into its fierce power, but it's gentle and causes us no harm. So the spiritual power of Amitabha is all warmth and gentleness. Gently and gradually you unfold the petals of your spiritual potential. And Amitabha's path is one of attraction to nirvana, the longing desire to embrace the warm red sun. In Sukhavati, the life of the Buddha and that of his people extends for measureless kalpas. And for this reason, he is also called Amitabha, infinite life. And since he, Amitabha, realized Buddhahood 10 kalpas ago, he has limited disciples, all arhats, and also an assembly of bodhisattvas. So this Buddha field is adorned with oceans of merit. And all those living beings who are born in Sukhavati are all non-returners and will achieve Buddhahood in this life. They are numberless and can only be talked about again in terms of kalpas. So imagine for a moment a huge empty cube as the beginning of a kalpa. Approximately 16 miles on each side. And once every 100 years, you insert a tiny mustard seed into that cube. According to the Buddha, the huge cube will be filled even before a kalpa ends. So what are numerous kalpas like? Again, we can't conceive of this. And the Buddha said that living beings who hear about this should vow, I will be born into this land. So if there's a good person who hears the name Amitabha spoken, whether for 1 day or 2 days, or 4 or 5 or 6 days, even 7 days, with one heart unconfused, When this person approaches the end of life, Amitabha will appear before them, and he will guide them, and they will be reborn in the land of bliss. And there are many other Buddha lands overseen by other Buddhas, like Akshobhya. But Sukhavati, created by Amitabha, is brought into being through the power of his meditation on infinite love and compassion, but combined with emptiness of the insubstantial nature of all phenomena. It is created from Amitabha's feelings for all beings, coming from the vows of Dharmakara, creating a perfect world for all living beings to live in. So from the king who became a monk and vowed to save all beings, to our Buddha, through 2,500 years, to Bante's vision in India, we have this lineage of connection to Amitabha and his land of bliss, to Sukhavati. Amitabha of infinite light, your light shining in all of space, penetrating us with your love. A warm, soft, glowing red light that catches us in our meditation, bringing warmth to our hearts, setting them aglow, our hearts bursting open in response to yours. Your love for all beings, shining in the warm glow of your light.
Thank you, Maitrikaya. Really wonderful. Kind of vast vision of colour and beauty, and told with passion and poetry. So Sadhu, Maitrikaya, really stunning. Thank you again. So maybe now we'll have a 10-minute break, and we'll come back and do some devotions to Amitabha. So yeah, see you in 10 minutes.